In all our efforts to heal our psyche and raise consciousness on the planet, we have all but overlooked the very instrument of conscious thought and communication. Yet our forked tongue English language, which is the leading software of the Western mind, is itself in great need of retuning and upgrading. Over the course of my life, I cultivated a heightened sensitivity to how the total normality of insanity in society is echoed, reflected, and reinforced by the English language, which inadvertently yet unavoidably propagates an antiquated and manipulated vision of reality promulgated by the ancient church as an instrument of mind control at a time when people had to surrender their mind if they wanted to keep their heads about them, quite literally. So if we elect collectively to upgrade the English language to a higher frequency through our linguistic creativity and naturally occurring verbal eccentricities, then ultimately even clatter from our idle chatter, prattle patter, blabber blather and palaver as we jabber gab in Babylon, will turn our glowing terms from verbal vapor, either hanging in the air or trapped on paper, into tiny bits of shiny matter as we gather, chat, and natter on, and with new skill at thrilling statements that instill fulfilling imagery of higher possibilities, will finally still the quiet riot of the wild child's manic panic through the mind, so we can flip the switch, enlightening every circuit of our consciousness with the electric surge of verbiage that encourages superb and selfless services to spread from soul to soul around the globe by what is said in all the light years up ahead. And then, from the islands of silence between all that's spoken, we will listen as doors to the heartland spring open.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
So what's interesting is you're obviously a native speaking English speaker, and you reference the English language. It seems that this is probably this phenomenon that you're getting to, that is in every different language in many different ways.
Yes.
But as I was preparing for this podcast and I thought, we ascribe a lot of cultural differences to a culture, potentially different genetic dispositions, climates, a lot of things. The one thing that I don't think we've looked at is how the language itself is shaping the individuals who grew up speaking that language.
Yes.
And I was, it's curious for me to kind of explore that pathway for you as well. And of course, we'll be focusing on English because that's the language that we're speaking in here now. And that's the language of the listeners. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be listening. But fundamentally, I'm just curious if you've kind of taken a circumspect view of the rest of the languages in the world, talked to other linguistic, kind of people of your similar mind and explored this.
A little bit. In the 80s, I read a book called On Puns. I think I know the editor, a collection of essays by linguists, and mostly they were talking about other languages and puns in other languages, and it's just so interesting what words come together to resonate at the same frequency, yet be very heterogeneous in their meaning. And I recognized early that words may be more connected through sound than through meaning. So yes, it happens in every language. It's just that English has so many languages in it.
Yeah.
And so some, I think, I think the language was salted with contradiction.
So conscious manipulation of
yeah,
our language.
because that goes on.
Which is what you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, that happens right today.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so interesting. I recently came across a quote that, I don't have the complete quote, but it's by Thucydides, the Greek general and historian, writing about the war between Athens and Sparta. And he said the greatest horror of all was the corruption of the language. And Confucius said the first thing he would do if given charge of the administration of a country would be to correct the language.
I think it's one of the big tasks of a philosopher or a poet is to actually start to clean the language in a way that you can use it without infecting the person that you're delivering and incepting the idea of the word into from all of the baggage that it's been associated with. Like the word God is a dirty word in the language for so many people, and that's a shame. It's a good word. It's a good word. So cleaning that up, the word love has become reduced. I think Don Miguel Ruiz calls love the fallen angel because it doesn't really mean the same thing. People think love hurts, like they have all of these associations. Well, it's never actually the love that hurts.
Right.
It's the way that your mind has responded to the ego's desires and your attachments that actually hurts. And so cleaning language has been one of my own pathways of thought. But the idea of actually sometimes we may be trying to clean something that's baked into the nature of the word itself. And so maybe we need a new word.
Oh, I completely agree. I think in some cases it's about tuning up an existing word. And in other cases it's about bringing through new words.
Yeah.
Like I upgraded intelligent to intelligental because there's really nothing smart about a brain without a heart. Although it seems to be the ultimate seduction because it grants us unchecked power, but just to bring our darkest hour, for it endows us with a genius for destruction. So yes, tuning up and reinvention. And two things in regards to that. One is kind of peripheral. People have looked at the secret spells of the language. I also share sacred pathwords, which are words that reflect our innate genius to us and remind us of what we already know. And the simplest example is the fact that earth and heart are the same word. And it's just where you put the H. So ask any semi-literate child, what do you suppose is the implication of this connection? And wonderful answers come out. And ask yourself, ask others. It's like there's so much to contemplate in this convergence. And okay, I'll put that away for a moment. But so, yes, I think it's time to become more aware, to find more of these sacred pathwords. One of my favorite I've used, and people have it in poetry and such. I was walking in a park overlooking the ocean. This was years ago, and I said to my invisible friends, give me a new word. And they gave me the true meaning of beautiful. And all of these are just self-evident. To be truly beautiful is to be you to full. Be your wholesome self. There is nothing as exquisitely beautiful than a whole being who is true to who they are. And it's so funny, the word noble, I mean, it's self-defining. It's like noble. It's integrity. It's like you were talking in your trip report with Blue about the true king and the imposter. I mean, it was wonderful, and we all know that. And I have a poem on the letter I, because just as we have two eyes on our face, there are two eyes in the alphabet, and they talk about our higher and lower self, and the yo-yo effect. So, yes, it's in every language. All language is pun. I have a quote somewhere that the difference between languages is a singular way of making puns. and I'm always interested in what is the electro-poetic force that causes words to migrate across continents, cultures and centuries to come into the same vibration.
So this is kind of getting into another question that I had, which is you could look at these and say, coincidence. It's beautiful that you came up with that, like
beautiful.
Yeah. That's great, but it's a coincidence. Noble, coincidence. But what you're kind of hinting at is that it's almost as if the words came into form in a particular way, and a subconscious manifestation where that word actually came into existence because it was in resonance with certain other sounds and different other ways that words were put together. And those are the words that stuck, and other words kind of fell away. So it was almost like a evolutionary selection of our language that creates these interesting synchronicities?
Who knows? But let's look at the word coincidence. It's a word that labels and then dismisses as insignificant. And what it's saying is a coincidence. But it's not looking at, well, what are these two disparate elements doing sitting next to each other at a coffee shop? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you heard from Christian, but when I flew, I guess it was yesterday, a packed airplane. I sit between two fellows, engage in conversation with one of them. He was going to Kansas to meet with his cousin to go to a Dodger game, and he asked what I was doing. So I told him about our upcoming conversation, and he said, oh, my cousin was Aubrey's marketing manager until they sold the company last year.
Wow.
Mike, it sounded like Spadier or something.
Yeah, Mike.
And so then I arrive.
Shout out to Mike.
I arrive and I go on a little walk, and I have my parasol, and this beautiful young woman stopped me at an ice cream shop and to comment on my
parasol.
Well, and my way of being.
Yes. The whole vibe, the whole thing. And so how dare I be reductionist and assume that she was complimenting only your parasol? It's never only the parasol.
No, it's the gestalt, the whole energetic being.
Exactly.
So we exchanged names, and she asked what I was doing here, and I told her. And she said, oh, I was Aubrey's personal assistant for 4 or 5 years. A beautiful young woman named Jenna. Uh-huh. She said, I can't speak highly enough of him. Uh-huh. And she took a picture of us and sent it to you, so you might find it.
All right.
So those are co-inside dances, and we don't know what is the force we're working in because we're so ignorant. I mean, we are a fish in water, but I think in our case, rather blind to the substance in which we dwell, I think we're living in an echo chamber and a hall of mirrors, and that language is constantly echoing and reflecting either cultural consciousness or innate human wisdom. And because we have been deafened to our definitions, we are clueless. And yet the language is constantly echoing and reflecting, talking back to us, in some cases contradicting and undermining, in other cases offering a little jeweled gift, if we would but notice.